The World as a Virtual Reality. In 1994, Leonard Susskind wrote a famous paper called The World as a Hologram, in which he proposed the holographic principle, which has become the fundamental principle underlying a theory of quantum gravity, which is sometimes also called a theory of everything. The basic idea of the holographic principle is that every observer observes events in its own holographic world, as that world is constructed on its own holographic screen. Everything the observer can observe in its own holographic world is an observable event. The observer's holographic screen is just like a computer screen that displays those observable events. Susskind just as easily could have called his paper The World as a Virtual Reality, since in effect the observer's holographic screen is displaying images of a holographic computer-generated virtual reality world. Images of the holographic virtual reality world are projected from the observer's own holographic screen to its own point of view outside the screen and are animated in the flow of energy that energizes the computer. There are several critical questions. How does the observer's holographic screen arise? What allows those images to be projected from the screen to the observer's point of view outside the screen and animated in the flow of energy, just like the projected and animated images of a computer-generated virtual reality world? What exactly is the nature of the observer? The answers are inherent in the way Susskind explained things in his paper. The answer to the first question is that the observer's holographic screen arises as an event horizon in the observer's own accelerated frame of reference. Every accelerating observer will have its observations of events in three-dimensional space limited by the two-dimensional bounding surface of its own event horizon. The accelerating observer's event horizon is a two-dimensional bounding surface of space that limits its observations of things in three-dimensional space. That limitation is due to the constancy of the speed of light. As long as the observer continues to move along an accelerating world line, any light ray that originates on the other side of its event horizon can never reach the observer, and so the observer's event horizon is as far out into three-dimensional space as the observer can see things in space. The observer's event horizon is the two-dimensional surface of space that acts as its own holographic screen that displays images of its own holographic world. The next question is, how does the observer's event horizon act like a computer screen that displays all the projected and animated images of its own holographic world? The answer is that the observer's event horizon encodes bits of information just like a computer screen that encodes bits of information on pixels. The way this works with the holographic principle is that each bit of information is encoded on the observer's holographic screen in terms of qubits, which is short for quantized bits of information. A qubit is a quantized bit of information that is mathematically represented by a matrix, like a Polyspin Matrix that represents a spin 1/2 variable. A spin 1/2 variable can only be observed to point up or down, and so encodes information in a binary code, just like a computer switch that is either on or off. The Polyspin Matrix also gives a mathematical representation of rotational symmetry on the two-dimensional surface of a sphere, and so information is encoded in a rotationally invariant way on the surface of the sphere. At the level of a qubit, this rotational invariance is understood as the nature of quantum entanglement. Information is encoded by the Pauli spin matrix in terms of the eigenvalues of the matrix, which are entangled, and so information is encoded on the surface of a sphere in a rotationally invariant way. Quantum entanglement reflects this rotational invariance. A Pauli spin matrix is a two-dimensional array of numbers that must be encoded on a two-dimensional surface of space. That surface of space arises as an event horizon in an observer's accelerated frame of reference due to the observer's own accelerated motion. The holographic principle basically says that the accelerating observer's event horizon turns into its holographic screen when its horizon encodes qubits of information, which are mathematically represented by matrices. Each pixel on the observer's screen encodes a single qubit of information, where the pixel size is called the Planck area. The observer's holographic screen acts like a computer screen that encodes bits of information on pixels. Everything the observer can observe in its own holographic world is an organized form of information that can be reduced to bits of information encoded on its screen. Those forms of information are projected like images from the observer's screen to its own point of view. The next question is, how are those organized forms of information animated in the flow of energy that flows through the observer's holographic world? The holographic principle answers this question in terms of the laws of thermodynamics. In thermodynamics, all things are understood in terms of the nature of information that underlies the form of all things, which is called entropy, and the flow of energy that animates all things. The holographic principle explains the nature of entropic information in terms of qubits of information that are encoded on the observer's own holographic screen that arises as an event horizon due to the observer's own accelerated motion. In thermodynamics, the nature of the flow of energy is understood in terms of the thermal energy of heat that flows from hotter to colder objects. The holographic principle explains the nature of thermal energy in terms of the temperature of the observer's own event horizon, which is proportional to the observer's own acceleration. The holographic principle solves all the mysteries of thermodynamics. The nature of entropic information is a qubit. The number of qubits encoded on the observer's holographic screen is proportional to the surface area of the observer's event horizon that arises due to its own accelerated motion, with one qubit of information encoded per pixel on the screen. The temperature of the observer's event horizon which is a measure of thermal energy, is proportional to the observer's own acceleration. The holographic principle explains how the observer's own holographic world arises, just like a computer-generated virtual reality. Everything the observer can perceive in its own holographic world is an organized form of information that can be reduced to qubits of information encoded on its own holographic screen. Those forms of information are perceived by the observer as they are projected like images from the observer's own holographic screen to its own point of view outside the screen. Those perceivable forms are animated over a sequence of perceivable events, just like the projected and animated images of a movie displayed on a computer screen. Just as the observer's holographic screen arises as an event horizon due to its own acceleration, the animating flow of energy also arises due to the observer's own acceleration. In no significant way is this state of affairs different from a computer-generated virtual reality world displayed on a computer screen, as the images of that world are projected from the observer's own screen to its point of view outside the screen and are animated in the flow of energy that energizes the computer. The observer itself creates its own quantum computer that gives rise to the appearance of its own computer-generated virtual reality world with its own accelerated motion that gives rise to its event horizon that acts as its holographic screen when its horizon encodes qubits of information. The observer's accelerated motion also gives rise to the flow of thermal energy that animates all the projected images of its own holographic world. What exactly is the observer? The observer can only be understood as the perceiving consciousness that arises at the central point of view of its own holographic world, which the observer itself creates whenever the observer undergoes accelerated motion. The observer creates its own holographic virtual reality world with its own accelerated motion. That virtual reality world is unreal and has no being, since it is no more real than the projected and animated images of a computer-generated virtual reality displayed on a computer screen. Only the observer itself has its own inherent reality and existence. The unreal has no being. The real never ceases to be. There is no objective physical reality of the world out there that the observer can perceive. Only the projected and animated images of a computer-generated virtual reality world that appears to come into existence whenever the observer undergoes accelerated motion. Do not try to bend the spoon. That is impossible. Only try to realize the truth. What truth? There is no spoon. Then you'll see that it is not the spoon that bends, but only yourself. Please visit the Science and Non-Duality WordPress.com website.